Nick Caserio speaks and he makes it clear CJ Stroud is not going anywhere. But on the contrast, is Joe Mixon's time in Houston running out?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. Fun show lined up for you today as we're going to dive into Nick Caserio dropping some heat. Everybody is moronic. CJ Stroud is not leaving. We also got a little bit more information on the saga that continues with Joe Mixon and that mysterious foot injury. Now it feels like there will be no Mixon for next season. And I spelled no for the listeners at home that are not watching. I spelled no with the E, no Joe Mixon for next season. You get it. But also with some of the moves that are being made around the NFL, big moves that are being made around the NFL. Javonte Williams was one of the first dominoes to fall. But the markets will start to dry up quickly for the Houston Texans. Some of these bigger name prospects and players that teams want to keep in-house, they're going to get paid, i.e. Tyler Linderbaum. He's going to make north of $20 million. That's not in the Texans price range. I don't think so. And so what's next for the Houston Texans altogether? Shout out to my everydayers from the Himalayas for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network family. I'm your Texas Credential Media member and football analyst, John Hickman. Caserio said a few things that we're going to be able to talk about for a while, right? He mentioned the contract extensions for Will Anderson and CJ Stroud that needs to be signed roughly by mid-July. So we're a couple of months away from that. Caserio also highlighted Ed Ingram, a player who is now an undrafted free agent, unrestricted free agent. And he also said, listen, he had a really good year, the best year of his career. That's a position we're going to probably have to evaluate and see what our options are. Caserio also talked about Jake Andrews a little bit, said he liked him as a player, but wouldn't rule out upgrading at center. Of all of the things that we can talk about, Caserio gave us some heat to talk about for the next couple of days, but the biggest one of it all, I want some tea. Some tea there. Caserio on his quarterback. What'd he say?
He's our quarterback. He ain't going anywhere. We have a lot of confidence, a lot of belief. I mean, I'd say the philosophy that D'Amico and I have, we're going to support our players and do everything we can to kind of help them. And this league's about ups and downs. I mean, nothing's perfect. I mean, there was no team that was undefeated unless I missed something this year. So that's not going to happen. You know, by and large, we're probably going to lose 5 or 6 games. Going to be some margin on either side. You're going to have some good plays, you're going to have some bad plays, you're going to have some good games, you're going to have some bad games. Okay, how do you bounce back? How do you handle that? So it's just, I mean, this league is a one game at a time proposition, and how you handle it, every situation, ultimately is going to determine your success and your longevity. So no loss. I mean, look, the stock market's been going down for 5 days, so everybody's probably panic selling. So, you know, really what you're doing is you're investing more. So, but anyways, we have a lot of confidence in CJ. We got a lot of confidence in our players, and I'm glad he's our quarterback. Go ahead.
There was a few things that really stood out to me. Number one, he mentioned the stock market down for the last 5 days. And he said, what do? You invest in it more. Nobody's talking about that. That line right there, to me, signals, hey, I have to be better. We all have to be better. Our quarterback was down because he also mentioned, how do you handle loss? Handle the loss. I think the Texans really wants to see over the next couple of months, and it's already started, in my opinion, how does CJ Stroud bounce back from arguably the worst 2-game stretch of his career, right? That is on CJ Stroud. What is on the front office staff and the coaching staff? Again, equating it back to the stock market. The stock market has been down for the last 5 days. What do? You invest in it more. That is what the Houston Texans will do this offseason. Our quarterback was down because he mentioned supporting the players and everything, but the perfect analogy from Caserio When you look at the stock market and it's down, our players need to be invested in some more. Did we do everything in our power to get the players what they need to operate this offense from a functionality standpoint, from a schematic standpoint? Did our coaches have what they need? Did the quarterback in return have everything that he needed to be successful based on what the scheme is asking? And a lot of answers to those questions are no. Not at all. Not an adequate wide receiver 2 throughout the year. Not an adequate tight end 2 throughout the year. We'll talk about Joe Mixon next. There was no Joe Mixon throughout the year. There was a banged up, somewhat corpse of Nick Chubb as the year went on. They leaned on a rookie running back. So I really like the emphasizing, that when our players are down right now, what are we looking for? Two things. We're looking for how the players respond and how we respond. How do you handle the loss, and how as we as a front office can really invest into our players. He also went on to call the trade speculation moronic, emphasized we're not trading CJ. We're glad he's our quarterback. Those are the words directly from Nick Caserio. So what does that mean for both Stroud and Houston moving forward? It means mutually they are both tied to one another for at least 2 more seasons, at the very least. And I think it means the support for the QB is there. I also think this means for Caserio, who rarely gets this animated, it feels as though there's no better option out there, a quarterback who won't either completely hinder the roster or buy into what's being built, the culture in Houston right now. That's worth moving on from a quarterback who has played a huge role, may have not been as big as the defense, but a huge role in 30-plus wins in 3 seasons. And he also may feel like, guys, it was ridiculous of us here in the media to even speculate Houston moving on from CJ Stroud. And I love the support from Caserio. I really do. And I think it's right on time. Stroud recently talked about being embraced by Houston a few days ago. Caserio goes to bat a couple of days later after Stroud does that, says it at a foundation during his speech. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think in many ways, the team getting over the hump. And what is the hump for Houston? It's getting over the divisional round to get to the AFC Championship game. So for the team getting over that hump, it's on those two. It is on Caserio and Stroud as the quarterback, because the belief from myself, many people that I talk to, and throughout the league and the media, the belief is DeMeco Ryans' defense is going to be ready to play ball year in and year out. Year in and year out. What held them back this past season and dating back to the year prior, the offense. The offense has to be better, and these are the only two that can fix it in many ways. Nick Cayley can fix it, but he can't fix it if he doesn't get what he needs from his general manager. The quarterback can use Nick Cayley to fix it, but again, the general manager has to do his job. But in return, if the general manager does his job, if he invests more in a down stock market right now, which is CJ Stroud, then you put those resources in, you get resources back out. So for some people, maybe that wasn't the message that they heard. But when I listen to Caserio go to bat and I hear Stroud is here for the long run, he's our quarterback, I hear Stroud is here with me as long as I'm in the building. And I have to do my job in order to stay in the building after my contract is up, which is after this season. So, again, I hear a general manager who understands the value of contracts and the window that the Texans are operating in right now. What quarterback is out there that would immediately handicap the cap space for Houston? There's only one quarterback where, like, you got Dak, you got Joe Burrow. Those contracts, Houston hasn't touched that money yet. Houston has not given a max contract to a quarterback since Deshaun Watson, which is why they've been able to build their roster as competitive as it is. You go get a Joe Burrow, you go get a Dak Prescott, that ruins a lot, especially if they can't come in year one and win it. That's what made the LA Rams trading for Matthew Stafford so great, because the first year he got it done. Anything after that, it doesn't matter because you play for championships. Do you trust those guys to get it done? Maybe. I mean, Joe Burrow, yeah. Dak Prescott, maybe, yeah. But if it doesn't, the gamble is now you have to worry about the contract and a roster that is really tied with their hands behind their back. Now, CJ Stroud got the endorsement, but you know who might be on his way out? Joe Mixon. Stick around for more Locked On Texans talk as I dive into Joe Mixon out for the Houston Texans next season. I think that's going to be a really fun conversation to have. I hope you guys stick around for that simply because, I want you guys to hear what I have to say and I want you to respond to it. However, welcome to the 5-hour energy flavor draft with 18 different flavors to choose from, including new options like confetti craze, fruity rainbow, or cotton candy. There's something for everyone. The board is set. The flavors are ready. And you know what? I've already gave you guys my number one pick for my 5-hour energy draft, but I'm going to tell you who my mom is rolling with. She's rolling with classic girl, classic, cherry, bold cherry candy style flavor, sweet with a light tart edge, classic red fruit profile, bright punchy taste, smooth and easy to recognize, clean, slightly tangy finish. That's who my mom rolling with. She loves her some cherry, and you can pick whatever flavor you want to pick. But you know what's even better than a flavor with 5-hour? The 5-hour energy shots give you a boost with zero sugar, excuse me. You're getting all that energy with zero sugar. 5-hour energy also has a lot of upcoming flavors, innovations, planned. And so what you may not see now, it could be on the way. Find your new flavor, 5-hour energy shots, available online at 5hourenergy.com or available on Amazon. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Really quick, just to let you guys know, the deadline for teams to exercise their fifth-year options on 2023 first-round draft picks is in the early May 2026. So we're a couple of months away from that. But with Caserio talking about how they can essentially invest back into the market, the stock market, and in this case, the stock market will be the offense that we're talking about. He mentioned, different ways to upgrade. And this segment is going to be centered around Joe Mixon in many different ways. Joe Mixon immediately and how the Houston Texans could upgrade at the running back room. But he mentioned you can upgrade by free agency, but he also mentioned the trade market. And that got me thinking. Texan fans out there, who's a running back that's worth trading for? I think Green Bay said that Josh Jacobs would be back. He was a cap casualty candidate all for a week. So if he's back, obviously they feel like he gives them something offensively. They may want to stick around. And also, do you want to trade a premium pick? And a premium pick for a running back is between round 3 and 4. Do you want to trade that for a running back who, in many ways, start to be cut soon? Maybe not. But that really got me thinking about a man in Detroit, in David Montgomery, who since getting to Detroit, you're looking at 4.6, 4.2, 4.5 yards per carry, 13 TDs, 12 TDs, 8 TDs. He also has been incredibly impactful in the passing game for the Detroit Lions. And he's also one hell of a first and second down runner, just going based off of 2025. 12 first downs on first down runs, 21 first downs on second down runs. He's averaged 4.4 yards per carry on first down in 2025, 5.4 yards per carry on second down. David Montgomery would absolutely be a running back who at this time in his career is still under 30. He'll turn 29 on June 7th. So maybe you're looking at a really later round pick. Maybe you're looking at the 5th round pick, maybe a 4th round pick. Houston has 2 this year, could possibly garner another one if they decide to trade back. David Montgomery would be a great back. And here's the thing about David Montgomery before I get into Joe Mixon. David Montgomery has absolutely proved he could be a lead back in the NFL, right? He's a 1,000-yard rushing running back. And he did wonders for the Detroit Lions when it was just him and when it was him and Jahmyr Gibbs, when he was leading the way, right? And so you're looking at a situation. I truly believe the Texans think highly of Woody Marks. Montgomery is a better back, but that wouldn't take away from how Houston feels about Marks, and that wouldn't take away from Marks's touches as well. Maybe in some cases it would. Maybe you'll see a 60-40 split, 70, 65-35. But I think for Houston, they still want to find a way to get Marks on the field for an offense that when they get the right players to operate it, you want to maybe see multiple backs doing multiple things. And so when Caserio mentioned, viewing and assessing the trade market, I automatically thought about David Montgomery after I sat down and thought about it. But this is the conversation that needs to be had because one of the hottest topics of the year keeps getting hotter, and that is the mysterious Joe Mixon foot injury. Speedy recovery to Joe Mixon. But I've said before, and I'll say it again, the tone in which Caserio speaks on a Tank Dell or maybe other injured players feels completely different over the past year when you compare it to how he's speaking about Joe Mixon. And for the first time, the writing is clearly on the wall. Clearly on the wall. Caserio said, we've talked to Joe. Honestly, it's day to day. It's day to day. I think he had surgery this offseason. Let me say that again because I'm reading you verbatim. I think he had surgery this offseason. Some hot tea there. We'll see what the prognosis is for the season and try to figure out what ultimately makes sense. I think we'll see ultimately makes sense. What am I hearing here? This doesn't sound too hopeful. This doesn't sound too knowledgeable. This doesn't sound confident. This sounds like a general manager who keeps his word about privacy for his players' sake. But this sounds like the marriage is over, O-V-E-R. And it absolutely should. If we even get away from Mixon not playing, for whatever reason, Mixon not showing up, being around, but for it to be February and you hear the words, I think he had surgery, in many ways, and I'm not a fan of Caserio, but I respect the job that he's done for Houston. But in many ways, if the general manager is not in the know about your surgery and your your injury, that's a slap in the face. It really is. Like, what would have been positive to hear? Yeah, we talked to Joe. We know that he has some offseason surgery. He's getting himself back up to speed. He's been training. We've seen him around the facility. He's also doing private workouts. But we just appreciate his openness. And, it's been day to day, but he's been progressing. That is what you would have wanted to hear from general manager Nick Caserio. And in many ways, his hand is forced here, right? Because perfect example, unlike the tight end unit where Brevin Jordan was hurt, Case Stover missed some time, they had to bring in Harrison Bryant. None of those guys are Joe Mixon. None of those guys have been remotely close to Joe Mixon. None. Yet, those guys, when you ask the coaches or you ask the general manager about an injury update, it's always positive from a standpoint of we know where our guys are and we know where our guys have been. And so we know the progression of our guys. It doesn't feel like Mixon is in our guys' mix anymore. It does not. So what's next for Houston? You hear Caserio say things like, hey, free agency draft, explore trade market. With what the Texans are trying to emulate and with what their offense is trying to establish, One of the most important things you can have is a veteran that is plug and play, a successful veteran that you can plug and play. Now, maybe tight end is a little different, but for two positions on this team, wide receiver and a running back, we would have not gotten Woody Marks last year if he wasn't able to communicate and pick up blitzes. We wouldn't have got all of that last year. Again, you look at how long he was in college, and I think with the offenses in the NFL becoming more modern, and maybe you're asking offensive players to do a little bit more, I think we're going to start to see guys staying in college, especially some of those top end guys staying in college because if you're a projected third or second round pick, you're probably going to make more money going back to college. But B, more time in college will make them more pro ready. And what defenses are asking of players and what offenses are asking of players, you want to see them player ready, pro ready when they come into the league. But I say that to say Woody Marks is a player that they like, and he was able to put some things out on the field last year because he came in many ways a rookie in the NFL, but a vet in terms of what he's been able to do in college in multiple systems. Those things are going to start to matter. But eventually, for the Houston Texans to get to a space where their offense is just clicking, you have to value not operating on a learning curve. And for Jaden Higgins, Jalen Noel, Marks to an extent, Ursery, they were operating at different times on learning curves, and that held the offense back. Montgomery is a guy that you wouldn't have to wait on. Jacobs, if there is some motion there, you wouldn't have to wait on DeAndre Swift, who the Houston Texans could absolutely trade for. He's a hot name that we need to keep our minds on. You wouldn't. He would just come in ready to play, and that was the expectation of Joe Mixon last year before a full football season to go by. We don't know nothing, and it's not that the media doesn't know anything. It's that the general manager says, I think we'll see. That doesn't bode well for the future. Now, you also got to consider it ain't all about the running backs that you need to improve on, right? The market is drying up quickly. So what's next for the Houston Texans in evaluating their offensive line? Hey, before we get into that conversation, let's dive into one that we all need to dive into. As the new year gets going, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner is a big one of them. Between busy work days, right? You got cold winter nights. They're getting colder. Packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference. That's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste amazing. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Everything arrives pre-portioned, so there's less prep, less mess, and no wasted food. That's important. You save time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners here at the Locked On Texans podcast 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/locked on. That's homechef.com/locked on. Again, for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert. And also, Texas fans, regardless of what people are saying, the NBA has been good this year, right? And the thing about the NBA is you always want to make sure that you find yourself in a position where the team that you're rooting for has a shot. Maybe it's the team that you're not rooting for, but you know deep down they have a shot, and they can get to the finals. There's a way you can get to the finals with FanDuel. You've ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into reality with their NBA sweepstakes. I'm sorry. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future, and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is a perfect time to lock it in. Visit FanDuel.com to get started, right? And also use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Caserio talked about the offensive line. I think it's important to play that clip so you guys can hear what he said.
I would say as it pertains to the offensive line, I mean, honestly, it's probably one of the best years we I would say as it pertains to the offensive line, I mean, honestly, it's probably one of the best years we had since I've been there. We played, I think we gave up the least amount of sacks, or second in the history of the organization. We had the most improvement from sack production from one year to the next. I think it was us and the Bears. So, I mean, honestly, our offensive line actually played pretty good last year. So maybe I was looking at different film, but, we're going to look at who we feel are the best players that we think are going to help us and, try to put together a good team.
How do you play
Houston Texans, by the way, will, per Aaron Wilson, so shout out to Aaron Wilson, the Texans will explore high-end free agent running backs in the market this year. I forgot to add that to that second level, that second segment. So clearly the Houston Texans are done with Joe Mixon. You're not going to go out there and spend top-end money unless you know you're going to cut a player to save that money to use towards another player. That's just the facts. Now, getting back to the market drying up, Tyler Linderbaum could land a deal north of $22 million per year. Ravens remain hopeful to get a deal done before he reaches the open market. So we have to keep that in consideration. General manager for the Jets mentioned that running back Breece Hall, the tags are an option. Acts again after that, says he'll tag him if they can't reach a long-term deal by March 3rd. So you're looking at two players that a lot of people wanted here in Houston that will be returning back to their respective squads. Tyler Linderbaum may actually get some leeway to hit the open market, but even at north of 22, whatever that number is, I just think that price out Houston. I mean, very, very much so. Tagging Breece Hall, which for New York, I mean, you got to find a way to keep players that have stayed down and loyalty to the franchise while they've been bad. You want to get them paid, but you also got to keep butts in the seats, and you want fans to keep coming to the stands, right? So we're looking at two players that could potentially be off the board. Now for Houston, what's next? A couple of years ago, when the Houston Texans were all in on Saquon, they had to pivot to Joe Mixon. DeAndre Swift was a name. Remember that? I mentioned that. He was a name that was linked to Houston for a while before the Mixon deal got done. But when I look at a Tyler Linderbaum, I think for the Texans, it's important to still evaluate what's out there. And the two names that immediately pop up to me when I think about life without Tyler Linderbaum, number one, Cade Mays from Carolina. Number two, Connor McGovern from the Buffalo Bills, who was really good as a run blocker last year. Cade Mays was a little bit better as a pass blocker. Didn't have a great year popping off the screen in terms of run blocking, but the Houston Texans got options, and I'm looking at what PFF right now is projecting Connor McGovern to make 3 years, an average of $13 million with $20 million guaranteed, 39 total. And so it's about how they can pivot. That's what it's about moving forward for Houston. And in many ways, this is a team that is used to pivoting. They had to pivot without Joe Mixon. They've had to pivot without Tank Dell. They've had to pivot without Brevin Jordan and Kay Stover being available. They've had to pivot without no Trent Brown for the first half of the year. So this team knows how to operate and pivot when things are not going their way. And what I trust is, and I hate to say that I trust this because it's been hard to trust Caserio in this next phase that I'm about to say, this next area that I'm about to say, but I trust that they have a big board of players that are either going to be outright free agents or that could be cut that matches what Popovich and Kaylee wants to do up front. And again, I would not be shocked or surprised if we get to next season with an upgraded O-line and running back room and we see more zone runs being ran because they have the players to do so. So which of these free agent centers, which of these free agent right guards, left guards, which of these offensive linemen that he can go out there and grab and put into 16 and Kirby to a Texan jersey, that makes sense for Houston. I think over the course of the next month or some change, we're going to figure that out. We're going to start to hear more and more. Houston likes this guy. Houston likes that guy. Houston is waiting for this player to make their decision on whether or not it's Houston or the next. Like they're going to do their due diligence, and I also think on the flip side, players are going to do their due diligence as well, which is why it's important to maybe get a player like a David Montgomery here in the building. Because if I'm a player, who am I blocking for? I want somebody that knows the assignments, knows the holes, and get up and get out of there. I want to be blocking all day. I don't want no running back that's in the backfield being too patient and not hitting the hole. Players recruit players better than anybody else. So we'll see. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, and also follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gents, peace.